All right, so we're going to introduce our guest speaker today. It's actually one of us in the community that has done quite a lot for other people, helped a lot of people to kickstart their career in the IT field, and is a CEO of our partner training institutions, the Touch House Tech uh, uh, technology school that train people in different branches. And one of the things that we are partnering with this upcoming session is the Oracle database administration. So he's here today to also greet this community and share with us what he has learned so far in the IT field. And this is no other person than George Allen DeConge. Yes, George, are you there?
Yes, flesh and bone.
All right. Okay. Perfect. So,
All
Joyce,
right.
welcome. Welcome to
Thank
Here We
you.
Take. The floor is yours.
Yes, thank you very much, Dr. Dennis. First of all, I would like to extend my congratulatory wishes to Elizabeth as well, and welcome her to the world of gigs, and just encourage her in her journey. It's gonna be rough and sweet, bittersweet. So be ready for anything. And
Thank
also, yeah, I also want to thank everybody for coming out tonight to the webinar. And before I start on what I have to say, I would just like to talk a little bit about Touch Tech, Touch House technology, So just like Yahweh IT, we also train people in, IT databases, most especially. Our specialty is in Oracle, and we also touch AWS Cloud, Azure. Since we are partnering with IT Tech, I'm not going to teach you Microsoft SQL Server, but I will give you what you need from the Oracle side, because everything is interwoven. Right now, to be a good DBA, you have to be, should we say in French, they say polyvalent, right? So you have to, put on multiple hats. And that's the way we're going to train you so that whenever you get into any environment, you're capable to pick up on anything. If they throw MySQL, Postgres, whatever, you'll be able to pick it up. And mind you, if you learn Oracle, every other database is going to be, easy for you to pick up. I know there are people around here who have ventured around Oracle and you know how it is. And that being said, we're going to provide very, very down to earth and very easy to apprehend uh, method of teaching. First of all, the environments are going to be provided for you. So you have your server, you can go in there 24/7, do what you want to do. You have access to all the tools possible. And, uh, you're going to have access to other facilities that we offer. I cannot talk about everything right now because, we're on time. And so for now, I would jump into what I had to present today, and maybe we'll talk more towards the end of this webinar.
Thank you, George. Yeah.
All right. I'm gonna go ahead and all righty. Can you guys see my screen?
Yes.
Yeah, so I'm gonna be talking today, about data, right, and information, but from another angle, because most of us here are DBAs, IT professionals. We talk about data every day, but people use data and information in two different contexts, or maybe many different contexts, right? So first of all, we have to understand what is data, right? from the conception, data is just, it could be anything. Every human being is walking data because, like, if you go to the hospital and they take your blood sample, chest x-ray, something, right? Whatever they get from there is data. Data can come in any form, right? In its raw form, it's anything. Now, once you have data, sometimes we hear people say, data is the new oil, is the gold. Yeah, it could be. Now, if you take crude oil from the ground, what do you make of it? If you have no knowledge of what to make out of that thing, it's useless to you. And that is where you now have to transform data into something that gives you meaning, right? So that is where information comes in, because once you transform data into information, which is structured and, understandable, people can now use that to do something meaningful, right? And right here we have the stages of data processing. So you have the input stage, which is anything, from your phones. Every day you browse, it's being inputted in some warehouse somewhere, and that's why sometimes when you browsing on your phone, computer, you get suggestions on commercials and things like that. You wonder, like, what's going on, right? That's data they've gotten from the warehouse, raw data. They've processed it to information, which they now use, for whatever purpose, right? So, and information is just simply, like I mentioned, organized data for a specific purpose. Because sometimes we always use the word data for information, right? And some people like say, oh yeah, I have this data I want to use. Yeah, I mean, data could come in any way, ones and zeros, binaries. From, you know, DBA standpoint, if you have a backup, that's data. What can you do with it? Nothing. If you do not, restore that thing, and the database engine comes in, process it, depending on what query, the application up front picks it, transforms it to what maybe the web face is going to use to present that to either maybe you and I, in the case of Amazon, Google, you know. So now that is information. Once you have information, I hear people say, information is power.
Mhm.
True, it is. But if you have information and you don't know how to use it, it's still useless, because too many people have information, but how can they use it? They don't know what to do with it. Like if I come to you and I'm talking to you, I'm saying like, do you know what a blockchain is? Right? And I explain what blockchain is. Somebody is going to be like, well, I mean, it's just, this new crazy technology of, decentralized system of storing data, where you have a consensus where, nodes need to agree for data to be passed across to, the next person and can never be deleted. Fine. Some other person is going to tell you, oh, I've heard that thing. It's used by Bitcoin, right? That technology runs the crypto. That person has knowledge because he's made use of information, because he knows something which you don't know. And that takes us into now the next step, which is going to be information technology. Because once you have data, information, there has to be something that has to process this thing, you know, has to process it. There has to be a methodology of processing it, of sending it across the ends of the earth, right? And that's where you come up with computers with processing power, hardware in it, communication through network, softwares that run all these things, servers. That's IT, information technology. It's broad. So like we DBAs, you know, we are the back end guys. So we are like the last person you see before the safe if we're in the bank, because everything data is inside the safe, right? and you have infrastructure guys who come in and build the bank. You know, when they build the bank, infrastructure guy is going to say, okay, I'm going to build this environment. I'm going to make it, if it's in the cloud, I'll build it in the cloud, and I'll provision X amount of computing power, give it this memory, lock it up in this VPC in the case of AWS, or VPN in the case of Azure, which is just a private network, virtual network, right? And they will say, okay, we would have to protect this network. So they'll have to use, security measures like implementing firewalls and subnets and ACLs, Active Directories and all that good stuff, right? That gives us what we know as IT, because sometimes we also use the word IT. Oh, like I've had this situation where I'm at a bar and I meet this, white chicks. I'm like, they can know nothing about anything. They ask me, what do you do? I say, I'm into IT. And one of the girls is like, you say, what? IT? Well, little did I know that she is a pro. And she's like, so when you say IT, like, what do you mean? I'm like, database admin. She's like, okay, now you're being precise, because I was about asking you what is a CMOS, and I would be like, you know, so you need to watch what you say out there, So we often use the word IT, right? It's broad, it's huge, it's a combination of many things. It's just a way of processing that data, securing it, making sure it's being transported from one end to another over a network. Every network is a client-server relationship. No matter what it is, your phone is a client. The minute you send something across a request, let's say Google, the server on the other side is the server. I would say the server is the server. I mean, that's the same thing, but that's what it is, right? So if, let's say I send a text to um, Dr. Kiawe, I am being the client. If he replies my text, he's being the server. That's just very basic what IT is all about. That movement of data front and back, and the processing of that data and presenting it to, whoever is in the position to make whatever use of it. Now, once we get through that point, we this is still like the whole information technology thing, what applications, integration, deployment, migration, all that falls under IT. It's broad. Now, people who have knowledge are the ones who actually take information and make something out of it. For example, we have, let's say, software developers and CTOs, right? When the let's say the business analysts, right, the BAs, they pull up data from a database, a structured database or a relational database or a warehouse, what have you, right? They come up with all these stats, graphs, charts, and all that stuff, right? And they come to the CTO. Let's just give an example, Amazon, for example. And Amazon, the CTO is like, they go through this data information. They're like, oh, we've seen that ladies normally buy, red bottom shoes at this time of the year from this seller, right? They are like, okay, that's good information, and they go through with it like, oh, yeah, the ladies from this age buy mostly this brand at this time because maybe it's spring break, time for party, college kids, go out there, get those shoes and go party. The CTO is going to be like, okay, that's some good information. So how do we use this information right now? You start having the brain boxes coming up. Oh, we can write an application, from our side, which is going to direct, people across the internet who are looking for this particular brand, right, to this shop, you know, maybe it's their shop, right? Now that's where you start having cookies on your web browser. You can be browsing, you don't know. Cookies are just information, metadata they pick out of your um, internet activity, right? And they send this feedback. They use this feedback to send you tips on commercials. Sometimes you just wonder why maybe you want to Google something and Google just feels that thing for you, or maybe you're just browsing and you once just say, oh, I'm looking for a Mercedes AMG 63, and everywhere you want to open your web browser, there is Mercedes M AMG 63 everywhere. You know, that's how people who have that knowledge, they now go to the background, they program something to use that information which came from data, right? Now, this right here just shows us, how this is done, you know, from data to information to knowledge, now to the decision making, which is the CTOs, the CEOs, who use that information to come up with that decision, which is going to, change or maybe make things better for a company, or, sales go up, right? There is another level on top of this one, which we have to strive to be there, right? If we go to this beautiful chart or pyramid, there is the top level that has to do with wisdom, which is understanding, integration, application, reflected upon, actionable, all that stuff. This is somebody who has an insight. They don't just look at what they see or what they know, they go beyond that. And that's where you start having visionaries. Elon Musk, you know, um, Bill Gates, Steve Jobs, right? They use from data, information, knowledge to come up with groundbreaking things, technology, products, disruptive things, right? They have, they don't just see that information for what it is. And they don't just have just the knowledge. For example, let's take Jeff Bezos, right? Everybody had a shop, we're selling. When the dot-com boom came around, people started going online with their shops, right? And he started with books. Then he looked around and he's like, okay, data is very valuable. I have this information about data. I have the knowledge on how to make use of this information. What can I do which is going to be groundbreaking? Aha, came up with Amazon, where you can get anything, right? He used that knowledge which he got from the information he got, which came from data, to create something which you and I and everybody on this uh, forum right now cannot do without, technically, except maybe if you go to Africa, then I mean, you just have to rush to the store and buy something. But here in the United States, or in the Western world, it's hard to do without Amazon. Same goes with Steve Jobs, right? Yeah, before we had phones, fixed phones, which had to go through lines. Then came the cell phones, data was around that. Yeah, we can communicate over a long distance using a phone. I make a call from this end, dial some numbers, the digits are sent up to the satellite, it goes through a sent data center where it's processed and to the other side. Yeah, back then we had Nokia 3310. You know, it did just the basic things. Make a call, receive a call. Text you can send, maybe because back then there were no elaborate keyboards on your phone, because two had ABC, three had DE, and all that stuff. Steve Jobs was like, okay, what can I do with this knowledge I have from the information I have based on the data, right? What did he come up with? A touchscreen phone that had a keyboard on it. game changer. Today, we cannot do without touchscreen phones. Impossible. If they give you a phone like a Nokia 3310, it's going to be hard to deal with that stuff. First of all, no WhatsApp, Instagram, Facebook, nothing, right? So looking at data not just from our, uh, career or technical standpoint, my whole point here is we should try to look at data from a different angle, try to make something out of it because we can be innovators as well, right? The problem is, yes, we have data, we have information, we have knowledge. Do we have that insight? You know, that is the game changer. Normally, or actually, I don't think any person here wants to be a 9 to 5 person for the rest of their lives, right?
Yeah.
Someday you would want to make a change, but how can you make a change when you don't even understand what you have in front of you? You know, information is very important. Knowledge is more important. That wisdom, that vision, that insight is paramount, right? And I'm glad, the next part of this program is going to be, teaching people how to maybe get credit score boost up, in the next 6 months to 800 and stuff. That is knowledge, right? That is knowledge which we're going to get. The next thing, somebody's going to use that knowledge and come up with something, you know, just try to see how we can get beyond just looking at data from our career standpoint. Yeah, we know as a DBA, what is data? It's there in the database, right? For a relational database, is going to be structured into tables. Those tables have, a relationship, right? And the table have to be uh, consistent at all times, or the database has to be consistent at all times. It has to be backed up. There has to be, redundancy, so there is no single point of failure and all that stuff, right? Yeah. From that standpoint, we are down at the bottom, the gatekeepers of data. If we want to stay right there, that's fine. You go on top, you have people like BAs, they come in, they get this data, they make, run some complex algorithms on them and give you information which other people use. It becomes knowledge to them. They make good use of it and others just take it and run, you know? So that being said, I would also like to touch up a little bit on what was said in the beginning about this field, right? For those who are not there yet, you're very welcome. Interesting, fascinating, challenging, but satisfying. You know, if anybody stands out there and tells you, "Oh no, I don't like, those DBAs, or these IT things," as they always say, it's not for me. Hey, the human brain is capable of learning anything. Nobody can tell you that you cannot learn at any time. It's impossible. Your brain actually, scientists say that we haven't used up to 10% of our brain, if I'm not mistaken. So what's the other 90% doing? Just chilling? You can use it. It's just like a machine. If you don't use your memory up to a certain point, it's still going to be able to run more. But if you don't use it, it's going to run just what you run every day, you know? So coming in, do not limit yourself, push yourself. I, for one, I'm going to be very honest with you. For those who are going to be joining Torch House, there is this African proverb that says you spank the kid with one hand and you hold them with the other hand, right? That's how we do it. We give you raw, but at the same time, we hold you and make you understand that this is how it's supposed to be. So when you go out there, you're already hardened, right? It's not going to be, hey, you're going to make 6 figures. Yeah, you can make 6 figures in 3 months and you get fired. Very possible. Not even very possible. It happens all the time. But Kiawe Tech, Touch House, what we do is prepare you for battle, right? Not just to go fight, to survive, and not only survive, thrive and become a general someday, where you can also be a manager, whatever you want to be. So I would like to encourage anybody who is here who is not inside yet. You cannot stand outside of the club and you you want to dance outside. Come inside and get the real deal. Thank you.
Thank you so much, George. So thank you so much for the wonderful presentation. We're going to
Doctor, I
give
have a
room
question.
yes, we're going to give room for a couple of questions for George. And let me start with myself and then I'll go around. George, we just talked about the importance of data, and it happens to be that we are a community of database administrators. So
Yeah.
can you tell me, for someone who is not really so used to what data is all about, how is starting a career in the database field actually important for their future growth in the IT field?
Okay. Yeah. So first of all, there's one thing I want to let everybody know who is interested, right? The entire IT field is about data. So data is that thing that is like the oil, right? You build these oil rigs, you build these companies, you have the gas stations, you have all these things are there just for data. So what I'm saying is this: if you're coming into the IT field, yes, there is. I saw somebody posting about, asking a question about machine learning. What is the machine learning? It's learning about data. It has to use data to make that information possible. You know, somebody talking about system administrator. What are you building? Building for what? You're building an environment for data to reside in, right? A network admin, what are you doing? You're connecting point A to point B so data can go across, right? A cloud engineer, what are you doing? You're virtualizing things, in a huge data center so people can rent those resources to be able to move their data across, to save it, to secure it. Data and the DBA is the man. The DBA, like I said, you're the last man standing before the safe. The safe has data, you're the last guy standing. If you say no, nobody gets in.
That's right. All right. Thank you so much, George. Yes, Dio, got a question.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. George, for this wonderful presentation. You're like reminding me, refreshing my memory on how data and information is being used in every level of management for the purpose of decision making. But the question I'm about to ask is one of the questions I already penciled down for the upcoming induction that is coming up September 4th. But I think it's going to be better for me to ask the question here now that I have a professional from both sides.
Okay.
Because my question is on Oracle and SQL.
Okay.
Now, aside from my understanding and which I know that I understand that SQL is for Microsoft, right?
Correct.
And Oracle is for Linux, right?
Yeah,
Oracle.
if you're talking about the operating system
Yeah,
to
operating
run on.
system. Yeah. Then I know DB2 is for IBM.
Yeah,
so
which
aside
is Linux.
aside from the query syntax that's similar, I'm talking about SQL and Oracle now. What is the major difference between an Oracle and a SQL?
Okay, so technically the difference is very like it's like not too big, right? First of all, the way they process data is almost similar because they use the SQL language, right? They're going to have very little variances in the language. For example, in Oracle, if you want to query a system view, you do $, right? SQL, you're going to do the add sign, things like that, right? But those are very minute things, right? Now, where we get into the nitty gritties, right? Microsoft SQL Server started running on Linux 2019, right? Version 2019, I believe. Oracle could run or has been running on almost every other operating system, Windows, Linux, right? Now, the difference is this. First of all, at the level of the operating system, the Linux operating system is, first of all, it started up open source, so you can jump in there and make your own version of it, right? And it's more secured, and that's why data centers use Linux a whole lot. Your phone, Android is Linux. In fact, Linux is all around you, right? Linux is all around you. So that is one point. Secondly, if you go to most companies, right? Yes, they're going to be running a platitude of, um, database platforms, right? But for the most part, mission critical data would be on uh, platforms like Oracle, because Oracle is very, very, very reliable, very, very reliable, and its processing engine is very robust, right? Now, Microsoft SQL Server, on the other hand, has come a long way, and they are coming up strong, you know? So what I will tell you is, I know your question is going towards which should I take, right?
No, I already understand what I want to take. I just want to
Okay.
know
Okay, the
when I
differences.
can.
So the point here is this: it's going to be very important for every DBA, not just you, everybody on this forum right now, to know more than one database platform.
Yeah.
Right now, when I started as an Oracle DBA. Lo and behold, my very first job, when I got in there, I was given a laptop, and they're like, you know what? You're going to do Sybase.
You're gonna do what?
Sybase.
I don't know what
That's another one.
Sybase is a brother to Microsoft. Microsoft broke out of Sybase to become Microsoft SQL Server.
Okay.
Yeah. I was like, really? You guys didn't hire me for Oracle for Sybase. They said, but you're a DBA. You know what I mean? You see? But there's one thing. Being a DBA, if you limit yourself to one thing, it's going to make it very hard to adapt to the other ones. But I can tell you also one thing. Oracle, once you learn Oracle, every other database is going to be very easy to pick up. But if you reverse that, you know, you might find it hard because Oracle, first and foremost, Oracle is on Linux. If you're coming from the Microsoft world, you'll be like, what is a mount point? What is, how do I change this? How do I do that on Linux, right? But somebody from Oracle, we work on Microsoft every day. Your server is going to look almost the same, right? My computer is going to be there. You click, you go to C drive, E drive, F drive, you right click, you can do whatever you want to do. Linux, get used to the black screen.
How about the interfaces? How about the interface? Like for Oracle, when you want to manage your database, you use a Microsoft SQL Management Studio,
Yeah.
and I've seen a couple of DB2 interfaces. They use virtually code for everything. How does Oracle, what does Oracle look like? Is it like a GUI, graphic user interface, or something?
Yes, Oracle gives you have free Microsoft what Microsoft, where did that come from? SQL developer, right? It's free. It comes with Oracle. Then you have OEM, grid control, right? You have Toad, you have DB Artisan, In fact, every other tool out there, apart from the Microsoft Studio, can run for Oracle, because for the most part, there are some basic things that you would do using these tools, right? For example, changing user passwords, or creating a view, creating a stored procedure, trigger, function, troubleshooting slow running queries, those kind of things. All these GUIs they give you, is the difference starts coming in when you're going into proprietary technologies like replication, high availability, maximum availability, right? Then you start having their own specific tools that work with those. But basic DBA day-to-day stuff is going to be almost the same, because Toad produces Toad for Oracle, Toad for DB2, Toad for Microsoft SQL Server, Toad for Sybase, right? Toad for SAP, right? From Oracle standpoint, you can use OEM grid control, interestingly, to access Microsoft SQL Server, Sybase, DB2 monitoring, actually, not to do much, just monitoring, right? And you can use SQL Developer to do migration from Oracle to Microsoft, Microsoft to Oracle. You can use OEM to do same, right? So that's where Oracle has, an upper hand technically. And I mean, if you go out there, the most popular database engine is Oracle, without a doubt. If you Google that right now, Microsoft should be coming up to number 3 by now, because MySQL is number 2 and Oracle still owns MySQL, you know? So Oracle is solid. The only problem with Oracle is the licensing is high, bloody high. You understand? So companies would prefer to have Oracle handle their mission critical data. Then the rest, whatever they want to put, whatever they want to use, open source, Postgres, you name it.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
You're
In
welcome.
view of time, guys, I will take one more question and then we can proceed. Anyone else?
Yes, I would want to ask a question.
Yes, please, go ahead.
Okay, thank you for that wonderful presentation. So my question goes in terms of the market, like when you observe the market as far as Oracle is concerned on SQL Server, what can you say about that? Because I'm actually asking this question as someone coming from the Oracle background, and my experience with Oracle and SQL. So what is your own view as far as that's concerned?
Yeah, so undeniably, Microsoft SQL Server is coming up strong, right? For a fact, just like, it's they all rotate. At some point in time, somebody is going to get the edge, the other person is going to come back, some other new person is going to come, right? So you'll be surprised to know that MySQL, right, is also very, very high up there. Oracle has been around for a minute, solid for a minute. So most places already have it, right? Now, what happens is, because of the licensing, right, they're turning to Microsoft. You see what I'm saying? For their maybe, other production or development databases, right? They are coming in their numbers to get Microsoft's MySQL and all that stuff. But now, what's going to make the difference is, do not look only on, which one is rocking the charts, because at the end of the day, trust me, most job descriptions now, you're not going to be just one DBA. You see, they're going to say Oracle, Microsoft SQL Server, Postgres, MySQL. You should focus on learning as many as you can, because at some point in time, knowing just one database platform is going to be obsolete. You're going to be seriously obsolete. Like, same as the cloud, right?
Yeah.
As a DBA, you should have an idea of, what to do in the cloud if you go to an environment that has a cloud. So it's, at this point in time, it's not a one fit all situation where I'm going to tell you that, oh no, Oracle is the deal. No, I'm not going to say Microsoft is the only way to go, but it is very, very popular, right? But to be a solid DBA, you need to know at least 2, at the very least 2 or 3.
Yeah.
And the good thing is DB2, Oracle, you just pick it up. If you know Oracle, every other database that runs on Linux is going to be a breeze. If you know Oracle, Microsoft, you combine those two, you're golden.
Thank you so much for that, George, and thank you so much, guys. One of our goals here in the community is not just to get you to job market, it's also to look into the future and be able to guide you on which direction you should follow. Most of our meetings right now, we just had a meeting this week where the director literally came up and mentioned that if you stick with one relational database management system, you are going to phase out, which is very true because things are becoming interrelated. And that's why you see us partnering with companies, with training institutions that are also doing training that can bring in additional knowledge, expert knowledge in other fields to help you guys, especially those of you who are already sound, very good in SQL Server. You want to learn something new to that. And like he said, I cannot overemphasize on that. It's really important to stay in this field that you need to know another relational database management system. Cloud, yes, and another relational database management system. That was it. So every single year when you get a job and you start working, you should always have a goal. Like every year till you retire in this IT field, you should always have something like, what am I going to achieve this year? Set goals and follow through those goals. And with things like that, we will always be there to guide you, to show you which direction to follow. And we're doing this for best of our knowledge to help this community grow. Thank you so much, George. I would really appreciate. And George will also be talking on the
Doctor, I wanted to.
Yeah, just hold on. On the 4th of September, when we'll be having orientation, if you have Oracle specific questions or guidance, please make sure you don't miss that orientation. Our goal here is not just to force things down your throat, is to make sure that you take informed decision. And that's why we only bring the expert on board that already understands the field and know what is important and help you to make sure that you are not only going to a course, you have really informed, you are well informed before you make that decision. In view of time, Milton, please just be brief, please. I'm about to rush to the next topic. Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, sure. I just wanted to quickly respond to the, I didn't get his name there. I think it was Tamiyado or something like that. And I just wanted to quickly say that during our, after doing computer basics, in one of the focuses of that class is just to actually lead you through from what the computer is, and then we narrow it down to where the database is comes in, whether be it Oracle, be it Sybase, be it SQL. In that way, it helps those that are coming in that do not have maybe a non-IT background to actually fit in. In that way, I'm just helping those that are on this call that are non-IT not to, get scared by the words of George mentioned in Sybase and all of that, but to be able to know that they're still having a chance to be able to learn how all of those things comes about. That's what I wanted just to contribute to that from our computer basic class.
All right, thank you so much, Milton. Thank you so much, George, for coming. We appreciate it. Please always come back. We need you here for more of this knowledge to help the community grow. All right, okay. So guys, we're going to move on to the next topic of today. And let me get George off this spotlight. All right, perfect. So why do we bring topics like this? Someone will say, okay, these are database administrators. These are not financial planners. Why are they bringing topics like this? If you do remember when you joined this community, initially, we did mention that we are not just a community that teach you database administration, sorry. We actually help you in every single aspect of life. And this is just one of it. How do we make sure that everyone that is in this community has the basic understanding of some of the few things that matters for us here in this country? And one of the things that really matter, you will agree with me. I'm trying to get my screen to share and I can't find it. Hold on, guys. Oh, please. I missed this. Oh, okay, share screen. Select screen 1. Okay. All right. This is what screen are you guys seeing? The PowerPoint screen?
We are yet to see a screen, doctor. What we see now is facing.
Yes, find the PowerPoint now.
Doctor, we lost your sound.
Can you guys hear me now?
Yes, we do, doctor.
All right. Those the village people were alive today, huh? Okay. All right. So I'm going to go through this. We will not have enough time today to really explore every single topic that I really want to talk about today. But we have all subsequent sessions that we can bring that up. Especially one thing that I really wanted to talk to you guys today is on the part 2 of this training on financial education, which is really how to build and manage an LLC and what's the importance here in the US. But then we're bringing that up probably next week to talk about it. All right, so financial education. First disclaimer, let me make sure this is very clear on tape for everyone to understand. I am not a financial planner. I'm not giving you advice that are written on stone for you to follow. Every single thing that I share here today is just my own understanding, right? If you doubt, seek the advice of a financial advisor that has specialized on that, and you'll get more. But at least this is from my own understanding. I feel like I can share this knowledge with you guys to better help you. And let this be a topic of discussion, or open forum where we can openly discuss the topic and help learn from one another. Well, the topic is, how do I get my credit score to a reasonable why is this showing by the wrong slide? I have to use this other method. Anyway, sorry. Okay, so how do I effectively manage my credit score? If you live in the US, you will know that there is no way you can undermine this topic, right? Because it controls you every single aspect of your day-to-day life, right? It's from everything. Everything revolves around your credit score in this country. And you have to understand that. And I think that a lot of people will agree with me that for you to be able to effectively manage your finances, you need to know how money works, right? And not only how money works, you need to understand the system in which you live in and be able to let it work for your own advantage, right? And the credit score happens to be one of the few things that you cannot undermine it if you live here in the US, right? So what I'm going to talk about today is I'm going to really go on factors that affect your credit score. A lot of people here will tell me, okay, I don't know what's going on. My credit has been on this number for the last 2 years, and I just don't know how to get it. Well, guys, remember, for you to get a loan, and definitely if you want to live in this country for 20 plus years, you will definitely get a loan someday, right? Whether you want to buy a car, or whether you want to get a student loan, whether you just want to get a loan to remodel your house, whatever thing that has to do with finance in this country. The only credit worthiness that will determine whether you can pay back the money they're giving to you is your credit score. So your credit score is like your first wallet. It's like your key to every financial decision that you're ever going to make in this country, right? Planning to buy a house, I might not go so deep into that, but I'll give you a very brief overview on that for those of you who are planning to. Should I go for 15 years, 30 years, or health insurance? What are different types of health insurance? How do I choose the right health insurance and why should I do that? And of course, savings. Now you've gotten a job, money is there. How do I effectively make sure that money is working for me? Because at the end of the day, you want to make sure that at the end of the day, working, let the money work for you, because life is too stressful and you cannot spend the rest of your life working just to make a living. You have to figure out a way to make the money work for you, right? So now let's go on. The first thing I want to talk about is your credit score, right? Your credit score. Now, a credit score in this country will range everything between 300 points to about 850. Now, the topic of today is how do I bring that credit score to 850 within 6 months? And I can tell you, if you follow these tips, you can write it down, take a book, write it down, and follow the tips and put yourself in the next 6 months. Having followed every single tip I'm going to give you here, watch what will happen to your credit score. Remember, the first presenter today talked about data, right? Credit score in this country is just manipulation of data. And you've got to understand how the system functions, right? I don't know how many of you in this forum here can effectively say, when I do this, it affects my credit score. Or why has my credit score not changed for the last 2-3 years? Why is it still lingering around the same number? I'm planning to buy a house coming up. I have that card I'm trying to mortgage and to finance, and the credit institution will not give me any better rate because I have bad credit. Or I'm trying to rent this house, and the rental office will not let me rent this house because I have a bad credit. Or I'm trying to sign up for Verizon service provider, and they won't let me because I have a bad credit. So you see how credit actually is intertwined in everyone's life in this US? That is the reason why we're having discussions like that. Now, first, these 5 points that I'm going to talk about here today are the things that will put your credit from any number to any amount that you want to. Right? First thing, your bill payment history. Right? Your bill payment history. Now, what do I mean by that? This actually has about 35% weight on your credit. If you remember back in school where we used to have subjects that have coefficients, I would say, okay, this subject is coefficient this, it has this weight. Credit score also works like that. There's certain things that have more weight on how your credit score is determined and some not. For example, something like your payment history has about 35% in weight. What does it mean? When you borrow, you have to pay the money when it's due, right? Make sure you don't miss a payment, because the moment you miss a payment, it has an impact on your credit, right? The moment you miss a payment, it has an impact. How do I make sure? Because some people will say, okay, how do I make sure I don't miss it? I'm talking to you here from an experience. I've missed payments, and up to today, 2 years down the line, when I looked at my credit score, it still has an impact, a little bit, but it will eventually fade away. But to avoid situation where you miss payment is that whenever you get a credit card and you have to start using the credit card, always make sure you sign up for automatic payment and go for the minimum amount. Right? They're always going to take the minimum amount. And guys, be very careful. Those of you who go for credit card and then you only decide to make that minimum payment. This country is extremely cunning. I mean, we're living in a capitalist country. So you just have to understand that the system is not made for your own advantage. It is made in such a way that if you follow everything in the system, you are always going to be lagging behind. You're going to find so it's built in such a way that every single one of us should find itself on that rat more, how do they call it? The wheel. I'm missing the word. The rat that runs in the wheel that
Rat
never
race.
gets, sorry?
Rat race.
Rat race. Where you are, the rat, when you put a rat in that race, the rat will keep running, but don't understand that as you're running, the wheel is also turning. So you can run and run and run, and you get tired, but you never go anywhere. This is how this system is built, to put every single one of us in that rat race so that you never succeed. So the only way you can succeed is that you need to beat the system. You need to understand how the system works so that you work contrary to the way the system works in order to get out of that rat race, right? So when you only pay that minimum payment, it is made such a way that it will take care of your processing fee, your yearly fee, and your interest, if you only pay them. So you begin to wonder, well, I have this credit card for $5,000. I spend all the $5,000. I've been paying this minimum amount for the last 5 years. But when I look at my principal, it's still $5,000. What is going on? Yes, it will never change. Right? You will never, I mean, it will take significant amount of years to pay off if you only maintain that minimum payment. So what I'm saying here is that in order to make sure you maintain a good payment history, sign up for automatic payment and take that minimum payment. And don't pay the minimum payment. Make sure that when you take you are actively paying down your credit, your balance. But should something happen and you forget to make a payment, the bank will deduct that minimum payment and you will not miss any payment. And you are able to keep this 35% weight on your credit, right? So that's point number one. Now, point number two is credit utilization. Some people say, I live in the US, I don't want to have a credit card. No, we come from Africa or wherever you're coming from. In my country, we buy everything cash. Yes, I came to this country some 5 to 6 years ago. I had the same mindset. Came from Europe where we buy everything cash. I said, no, I don't like the American way of life. I'm not going to take any credit card. But that was wrong because I did not understand how this system functions. Right? Some people might have a different, contrary reservation on this point, but let me actually tell you, in this US, if you have never borrowed, you cannot also borrow. Right? If you have never borrowed, you cannot borrow. Don't say, no, everything I buy cash. I'm always buying cash. Okay, the day that you really need to get something that requires you to borrow, nobody will do that. Right? And I don't know whether you know that if you walk up to BMW with $50,000 cash to buy a vehicle, they will not give it to you. I don't know how many people know that. They won't. Because the system is made in such a way that every single money transaction needs to be traced. You walk up with $50,000. Where's the source of that income? Where did you get it from? Is it drug money? Is it illegal transactions that you did? That money has to come from somewhere that can be traceable. You know, so that's why you will eventually borrow that money somewhere. But at that moment that you are borrowing, because you did not do your homework to spend time building this, you will do it at a very high interest rate that will be contrary to even the concept of buying things cash. Right? For example, I'm always buying everything cash, and I get to buy a house, costs about $500,000, and I can only get an interest rate of about 7% because I was refusing to take credit cards or whatever to effectively build my credit. Someone that was doing that gets it about 2%. Well, your monthly mortgage and the person with 7%, you will not pay anything less than $500 difference just because of the difference in interest rate. Now, you begin to ask yourself, you're going to do that for the next 10 to 20 years or 30 years. At the end of the day, who saved? Is it the person who took time building the credit or you who did not you wanted to do everything with cash? Now, you got to understand that you have to do this. Now, I'm not saying that you should go out there and just get all the credit cards and be irresponsible. We are teaching people here to be responsible financially, because it's through these things that you show your credit worthiness. That if, for example, will you borrow money to anybody here? If you have your brother that borrows and never pays back, every single time he takes or never pay back, or you have to run behind him every single time to pay back, and he comes and wants to borrow $1 million, will you give that money if he did not even pay that $10 on time? Right? So just think about it this way. Every single one of us here has a financial footprint, and you are being traced. And that's why when you run your credit score from regular websites like Credit Karma, Experience, TransUnion, you see a different figure. But when you go to the bank, they get a different figure. And you begin to ask yourself how? Because they have the FICO score, which compares all these different credit history, and they check every single thing. For example, how many times has your account gone overdraft? Nobody thinks that that thing affects you, right? Like in 1 month, every single time I have like 10 overdrafts and I have to pay back. And then I miss this payment and I get a reminder and I have to pay back. All those things do contribute back here. So you have to understand that financial education and being responsible with finances is not only helping you, but it's helping generations to come. And if we want to build wealth, we cannot ignore this, right? We cannot. All right. So on credit utilization, you can't just get a credit card and spend all the money in it and want to pay back. Because the moment you pass the 30% balance, it has a negative impact on your credit score. So you should have it in such a way that whatever amount you borrow, keep it within 30% utilization. What do I mean? If I go to the bank and get a credit card of $1,000, I want to make sure, remember, banks have, or when you check your bank statement, there's always a day that the money is expected to be paid back. And 2 or 3 days after that day, it's reported to the credit reporting agencies. And we know we have 3, right? We have TransUnion, Equifax, and Experian. Those are the 3 credit reporting agencies. Not all banks report to all of them, and that's why most decisions that requires a lot of money, you have what is called a FICO score that compares all those 3 reporting agencies to get one score for you. So if I get $1,000, I can only, to make sure that it's not affecting my credit score, spend $300 out of that, not more, right? But I can also spend more. For example, I have something to do and I need all that $1,000. I can take it, but just make sure that before it's reported that you've paid that money down to 30%. Well, we will say situation can always make us not to be able to pay, but at least you should know that even if you don't pay because of situation, financial situation, that it affects your credit score. So you don't worry, why is this thing not changing? Because some of your cards you have 60% utilization, 80%, 90%, 100%, because I'm paying the minimum. It does not help you building your score. All right? That alone has about 30%. Just imagine, just because I paid my bill on time and I don't use more than 30%, and I'm already at 65% in a positive direction. Now, what else? Your credit card history, 15%. What does this mean? Credit card history. You should not open credit cards if you don't need it. Don't, just because you went to Best Buy and you want to buy this TV that you don't have, and the Best Buy guys are saying, well, if you get our credit card, you can pay back in 2 years. If you came there willing to buy that TV, you should buy it. Or don't just sign up for any credit card, because if you want to sign up for every credit card, everywhere you go in this country, there's someone advertising a credit card. In the airplane, in Walmart, in Best Buy, Macy's, everywhere you go, they have their credit card, right? So should you all sign up for it? No, because every single time you sign up for a credit card, it changes the history of your cards. The older cards, how do they get the history of your card? The oldest and the youngest. They take those 2 and they get an average out of it, and it tells them that is your credit history. So if you had a card that was 20 years old since you opened it, and you say, oh, I really don't need this card anymore, and then you go pay it off and you close the card, it's negative. That's going wrong, right? It's better you pay off that account, destroy the card if you don't need it, and let the account be dormant. Because the moment you close that 20 years credit card and you're opening another credit card because someone is offering you better rate, you're taking your credit history from 20 years down to 1 month, and it's taking away what? 15% of your credit history. Right? So, except you need it, don't open it. If you have enough credit cards that are old enough, try as much as possible to maintain those. And if you need more credit, apply for a higher line of credit rather than opening a new one. Because when you have a card and you get a higher line of business, it just adds the amount that you have available for you, but it keeps the history and it keeps this 15%. Guys, I know it's time, but just give me a couple of minutes. I'll wrap up this and we'll leave. So the next point that we want to talk about is the type of credits that you have. Right? Here, 10% of that goes into a mixture of credit. If you have all credit cards, it doesn't really help you. Right? Lenders want to see that you can effectively manage money from different sources responsibly. If you do not go to this country, those that went here, maybe they have student loan, regular credit cards, car notes, a phone bill, and so on. Right? How can I make sure that I achieve this effectively without jeopardizing it? Let's say, for example, Christmas, I have decided to give myself a gift, $1,000, buy a Note S20, and I have the money cash. Okay, you can walk up to Walmart and buy that. Or you can effectively also go to Walmart because you already have a Walmart credit card, buy that on credit, and wait a couple of days, like 5 to 10 days, so that it shows up on your card that you've used that $1,000. And when that shows up, get the $1,000 that you had and wire it back to them. You've done the same thing, but you've played with the system to help your credit. Right? Say I want to buy a car. Right? I want to buy a car. And I said, I don't want to get things on credit. Yes, it's okay. I'm not saying that people should just go and get credit. But if you have the money cash and you already want to buy that car, go to your bank. Tell them, well, I want to buy this car, $15,000. I need a $15,000 line of credit. The bank will give you, if you have a good credit score, your bank will give you that credit. Wait maybe 1 month. When that $15,000 shows up on your system, like you've borrowed $15,000, get the $15,000 that you had, wire it back to them, and then you see your credit score going off the roof. It shows that you borrowed $15,000 and you responsibly paid it back. It's the same thing, but just done differently to help improve your credit. Right? So, and of course, the last thing here is the number of credit inquiries that you have. Oh my goodness. I see people that want to buy cars and they want to take it on finance and they walk around from one auto shop to another, go around, they go here and they run their credit. They run hard inquiries on the account. All those inquiries have an effect, right? But it's also okay if you're shopping around, you want to buy a car, you don't just want to sit somewhere and buy. You're shopping around. But just know that the more hard inquiries you have, the more it affects your credit. But in this case here, if the line of inquiry is for the same purpose, let's say car, and you run it, it affects you just one. But if you run it for car dealership, and then you decide, oh, I don't really like car dealership, I need to go to the bank. And then I go to the bank and they run it. The bank is running it in order to give you a different finance. So it's going to affect you differently. So all these different inquiries affect you. And there are two different types of inquiries. There's hard inquiry and soft inquiry. Hard inquiry really has an effect. Soft inquiry is maybe you want to rent a house and the landlord wants to know your credit and runs them. It's a soft inquiry. It doesn't really affect you. It fades away very fast. But all this inquiry with time, they eventually fade. But just be mindful of the fact that it does also affect your credit. So with all these points, today is August 24th. Look at where your credit is. Follow these 5 points, just like I explained, and watch what happens in 6 months. And thank me later. Okay? All right.
Hello, doctor. Hello, doctor.
Yes, please.
Yeah, I have a question, please. I just wish to know, how does bank make its money? Why this question? I take a loan, for instance, $2,000, and I have a minimum payment, which is still my money. And I have like, after 15 months, I pay in back money, so I have no interest charged on it. And I take another one. How does bank make its money from me?
So you can, so if you take a credit card and you're only paying that minimum, in 15 months you will not have paid it off.
Yeah, I forgot to say that minimum, I have it, but I don't pay actually the minimum. So I go a little above.
Yes, that's what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to do that. But just be mindful of the fact that if the credit card was 1,000 and you use up all that 1,000, until you paid it down to a point where the balance is less than 30% of the entire amount, it will still affect you. All right? So now, Solange, to ask you, how do banks make money? I'm
Yes.
sure most of you have gone to places like Home Depot, not Home Depot, Room to Go, Best Buy, where they offer you credit cards with 0 interest rate for a certain amount of time. Do you know the trick behind that?
No.
Right? If you know that you have a card that you are not paying interest, your ability to spend increases. Yeah, you say, oh, okay, it's no interest, 2 years. Yes, your ability to spend increases. So all this is just a mind game, playing with all this data we're talking about. They've understood that when people have that, the ability to spend increases because they know that they're not going to pay any interest on that. Eventually, after that 2 years, you are not going to go back and give the credit card. You continue using it. At that time, when you continue using it, those guys are investing in you with long-term goals. They know that 2 years down the line, you're eventually going to use this credit card and will charge you credit for that. And eventually, you might not only use a little bit, you use more where they charge you more.
Okay.
That's where they make the money.
Yeah, I think that's exactly what they're trying to play because
Yes.
I think 2 years ago, they gave me a $2,000, which I didn't only use the minimum payment. I went a little above. So by the time my 15 months got elapsed, I paid everything down. And then I was like, okay, bye-bye. They said, no, you can take a 5,000, you know? So I was wondering, how do they make their money then? Because at the end of the day, I have paid nothing to the bank.
Yes.
Yes.
I have a question.
Yes, Dio.
We are actually talking about credit card here. My question is going to be on number 3 when you're talking about the credit age.
Yes.
I'm aware that you can keep a credit card as long as you want to, because when you close a hold credit card account, it will definitely have an impact in your credit score.
Yes.
But what about you buy a car? And you know, you were given 6 years to pay the car note, and you know the car is going to be yours. When you buy a car, let's take for example, you buy a car of 15,000, and probably your loan length is 6 months, and you decide to. I don't know if this has happened to anybody here, but it has happened to me a couple of times. And probably you decided to pay off the car note. You decided to pay off the car after 3 years. This will drop up to 40 points on your credit. And after the credit drop, yeah, you're going to get a notice that, okay, you know, an account was closed on your credit history. So that is the reason for the drop, but it's going to come back over time.
Mhm.
but the pace at it come back, at times it will not get to where it drops. What caused that?
Okay, so when you are signing up for any line of credit in this country, make sure that you inquire if there are any consequences for early payment, because of course there are a lot of business like that will say, okay, you're getting a credit for 2 years. If you pay it off in 1 year, we'll charge you a fine for that. All right. Okay. So, but if that is not the case, when you insert pay off, because a credit card, something like a car loan, this is a different line of credit and it's treated differently. Right? Because when you pay it off, it means that you've effectively closed the account. It's different when the account is closed because of non-payment, or even the worst thing is if that account has to go to collection. I'm missing that here on this point here. Collection is a credit killer. Right? It's a credit killer. And so that's how it is. That's how it is. So you need to actually inquire because when you do like that, it depends on where the bank actually reported the closure of that account. Was it effective payment or with a fine? Because if it comes with a fine, because of that, it might affect you negatively. Right? And one thing I wanted to mention here when it comes to collection is that, guys, in the US, this is something that most people don't really know. Statute of limitation for any debt in this country is 7 years. In the state of Texas, it is 5 years. Means that any debt that you owe after 4 years in Texas is bad debt. Right? Most of the time, this debt gets sent to collection because the people are not aware of all that, and then the collection starts sending you notice and you rush and pay. I will tell you, anything that hits collection in this country, you can negotiate. You can negotiate every single debt. It all depends on how old it is. If it's just 1 month old, of course not. But if it's already past that status of limitation, you can literally call the collection company and say, okay, I've realized that this is on my credit, it's affecting my credit. I owe you guys $1,000 5 years ago. Right now, it has passed the status of limitation. I want it off my credit. You can follow up and they will do it because it has passed. But most people don't know. But even if you decide to pay, because sometimes, how do they get it? Most of the time when you want to buy a house, that's when the collection, that's why data in this country is always shared among. Because suddenly you're trying to sign up and you have like 1 month or to your closing date, and then bam, you get a letter from the collection agency, a card that your credit has dropped 40 points or 50 points because a report has been submitted for this. And you begin to ask, but how did they know? They know the data is shared somehow among themselves. At that moment, you have no choice. You got to pay that money, but you must not pay all. You can call them and negotiate for an amount.
Payment to do it.
Not even a payment agreement. You negotiate. Sorry. You negotiate. You call them at that moment and negotiate and say, okay, you know what? I owe you guys $1,000. I'm ready to pay $200 right now. Let's cut the deal. You take it out of my credit and make sure they sign it later that they're going to do it. You pay it and they'll take it off your credit and then you will be fine, right? So that's one thing that I want to do that.
Okay,
Guys, I think we've really gone way beyond time. I'm going to stop here, but next week I will continue with this part here. And a few things I wanted to talk to you guys today is actually on this next point, which is buying a house, right? If you want to buy a house in this country, what are a few things they want to consider? Should I go for 15 years or 30 years payment plan? And then also I want to talk to you about the type of life insurance that exists. Which one do you choose? Also, how do you build wealth and protect it, right? The life cycle of every successful family, if you check in this country, is a what? They acquire the wealth, they build the wealth, and they protect it, and they transfer it. Most of us in Africa, think about it. You have families, super wealthy family, but when the people, the main vision bearer of that idea dies, the whole family, the whole idea dies with it. Because we have not learned how to acquire wealth, to build it, to protect it, and to transfer down to generation. All right. I'll be talking about all this next week. Let me stop here and take one or few questions and we can close.
Yeah, one last question for me, Doctor.
Yes, please. Go ahead.
Yeah, Doctor, what would you say someone trying to, because building your credit is another job on its own. I want to build my credit. Is it advisable for me to get this loan from my bank and pay for my car note, or do I just take it from my car dealer? Because on both sides, I'm building credit. So where do I build it best?
Yes, this is a very good question. And this is something that most of you should look at it. A, don't go to a dealership.
Okay.
Most of the time, when you go to your bank, right? Let's say I want to buy a car. You go to your bank, you have a couple of banks that you bank with. You can go there and say, okay, I want to buy a car. And they're going to ask you, okay, how much do you estimate the car is going to cost? $40,000. Okay. They run your credit and they see how much you qualify. And they will issue you a check. Remember, when you go to the dealership, they will do everything possible to make sure that you qualify for that $40,000. All right? They're going to run everywhere they can. And they're going to get you any rate to make sure, because their goal is to make sure that you buy that car. Remember, the dealership doesn't care where you get the credit from, because when you get that car for $40,000, they are not going to wait and be collecting the money every month for you. The bank that is sponsoring that will send them a check, and then it's done with them. They have nothing to do with you anymore. You're going to be dealing with the bank. So at that moment, they don't care where the money is coming from, right? But when you go to your bank, they know that they're going to be collecting this money, so they're going to do the best to make sure that you at least you really qualify. You cannot just wake up and you're making $2,000 every month and you want to go and buy a car for $40,000. Your bank will be there to protect that this deal they're trying to go in is more than how much you make. So maybe you start buying a $4,000 car and then build more income before you do that. So go to your bank, they will give you the best rate, or you can compare one or two banks that you bank with, see which one is the best rate, get that check. They will not even give you the check. They will just give you pre-approval or pre-qualification. How do you call it? Pre-approval letter. Yes. And then with that, you take it to the car dealer, get the car, and then the car dealer, the bank will send the check directly to the car dealer.
Okay.
The car dealer also send the lien document back to the bank. When you finish paying the car, you get it. Another topic.
So you're not dealing with the bank?
Yes, go through the bank. Yes.
Okay.
Another topic that I'll be talking about next week will be, which is a very controversial statement, but will be, should you buy your car or should you lease the car?
Wow.
Because most of
I
us
have
here
a question, sir.
Most of us will say here, lease the car, you never own the car. You're paying rent for the car, but you're never going to own it. Someone will say, no, just buy it. Why buy it so that when you finish paying it, you should own the car? But it's a topic of discussion. Should you lease or should you buy? And when you have an LLC, should you lease or should you buy? All right, we'll have that discussion next week. Yes, Philip.
I have a question, doctor.
Okay, yeah, Hubert, yes. I thought it was.
Is gonna be based on number 3. So it's still on the credit age stuff.
Yes.
So assuming you have 2 credit cards on the same financial institution.
Yes.
So if you decide to close the youngest credit card, it's still gonna affect.
Yes, every single credit card. Hold on. If you close the youngest credit card.
Yes. Will it still affect it instead of closing the older one if you decide to close the youngest one?
Okay. If you really have to close, you have 2 credit cards and you really have to close the youngest one. That's where the effect will not be as much as closing the older card. Like I said, if you know that you cannot control yourself, take that credit card, cut it, put it in the trash, and forget that you ever had it. Leave it dormant.
Okay.
But make sure you finish paying it before you do that.
Quick question, Doc.
Yeah, well, hold on. Let me make sure he's done. Are you done? Was that all for you?
Yes, sir. That was okay.
Okay, thank you. Yes, Ralph.
What about this idea of consolidating your credit cards? What does that mean?
Yes. So consolidating credit cards will simply mean that, for example, you have 10 credit cards, and every month you're paying $200 here, $5, $10, $30. Sometimes it's become very difficult if you are not really well established, you know, and then you might miss some payments and so on. So some companies might tell you, okay, what we're going to do is we are going to get all those credit cards and consolidate the loan, and we own that loan, and then we'll pay off these other people, and we will be the one that you owe. But remember, they are not just going to pay them and leave the cards dormant, right? They are also going to close those cards. So just know that that also will somehow have an effect, but just understand that sometimes those effects are not always negative, right? They'll be negative for a short while, but in the long run, it helps. For example, if I know that I'm going to buy a house in the next 6 months, and I decide that I don't have a credit right now, or I want to increase my line of credit, and I get a credit card right now because I want to start building my credit, it's going to have a dip on your credit score. But as you start using and paying back on time, before you hit to the 6 months, that effect would have neutralized and you are in a positive direction. So it's always very important that you understand when do you need to make the most important life decision financially and when to do something that will have an effect on your credit score.
Can I add something real quick to that point?
Yes, George. Yes, please go ahead.
Yes. Instead of thinking of credit consolidation, right, you can do a credit transfer where you take a card that has 0 APR for like 1 year. You take the debt from the other cards and transfer that to this card so you don't have to pay interest, right? And it's not going to close the other cards. So you're paying off with this card, but you're taking away the interest. So that way you're on, the safe boat. You don't want to go through the process of closing a card. It drops your credit by 50, 60 points, depending on how many you have. So that should be, the better option.
That's a very good point. Yes, transferring rather than closing. Yeah.
Okay.
I
have a question. I don't know if I can go ahead.
Oh, hold on, Dio. Let me get Olivia, and then I'll come back to you. Yes, Olivia.
Okay, so my question was, okay, for example, let me give you an example. For example, you have a credit card which costs they give you for 1,000, and then by the beginning of the month you use like 500 and you pay by the 15th of that month, and then by the end, let's say they want you to pay at least the limited amount by the 28th of that month. And then by the 28th, you have already used another 500. Would they still want you to pay another minimum amount or not?
Okay, so what will happen if you're trying to play with that? Because all this is a game, right? Is that what you should do in that situation is that you need to look on your credit, on your statement to see when do you get your statement and when are you expected to make that minimum payment. So close to the day that you are supposed to make that minimum payment, let's say you spend that $1,000, if there is a way for you to borrow $700 somewhere and put it there, right? And when they are about to report, they will be reporting that you owe $300. And immediately the report is over, you can take the $700 back again. And then just wait again 3 to 5 days before the day that is being reported, you do it again. So these are really a situation where you have a very important business decision coming in a very short while and you don't want to have any impact. But if this is for a long run and you really don't have any plan, well, just understand that if you use that money, make sure that you get it down to 30% effectively. You can leave it there, it will be affecting you, but when you pay it down below 30%, you see your credit jump a little bit up.
But what I mean is you use the first 500, right?
Yes.
And on the 15th of that same month, you pay everything. You paid everything.
That brings it back to 1,000.
Yes, and then before the 28th, which is your limited day to pay your minimum, for the 28th, you already use another 500. Do you still need to do another payment, or they will report it as?
At that moment, they will be reporting it as using 50% of your balance, of your limit. Yes, it's at a time that is being reported. It doesn't matter how many times you use it within the month, it's when it's being reported, right? So at that moment, it will report it as 50%, which is contrary to what we're talking about.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question, Doc.
Yes, Elvis.
I'm here waiting.
Elvis and then Dio. Yes. Yeah, go ahead.
Just a similar situation with Olivia. So if you have a credit line of 1,000 and then you are supposed to do a minimum payment every 23rd of the month. So for some reason, say on the 20th, you use all of that 1,000 and then you pay it off on that 20th. And then on the 23rd, that's when they have to deduct your minimum payment. Say the minimum payment is $100. And then they deduct your minimum payment and your full amount, 1,000, is 1,000 plus that minimum payment, $100. How does that affect your credit?
It does not. It does not. At that moment, you have more than, your account ends up having more than your credit, your line of credit, which means you have a plus on your credit, right? So it does not affect because it shows up zero utilization. But even in that situation, it happened to me also. But most of the time, if you look on your, most of the time that only happens when the payment was in transit. Right? They say they deducted the minimum payment and you send in money when that one has not been applied. Because if you try to go in and make the payment, it will show that the only amount is the balance. But if it's still in transit, it can happen a situation that you have already deducted the minimum payment and you've paid more than the amount that you actually owe, and you end up paying more than the limit that you have. In that case, it does not affect your credit, actually. Yes, Dayo.
Yeah, I mean, my question is similar to the question asked by the two previous speakers, but it's a little bit, in another direction. Let's say, for example, my question is all about the 30% utilization.
Yes.
Is it, okay, let's say, for example, I have a $1,000 credit limit, and I'm supposed to spend 30%, which is $300,000.
$300, yes.
$300. Is it advisable for me to increase my line of credit from 1,000 to maybe 10,000 so that at least I can have access to 3,000, provided I can pay back? Provided I can pay back. Is that advisable?
I like the fact that you emphasize, provided I can pay back. Yes, it is. That's the method you should do about it. For example, there are a lot of people that will come here and they say, oh, I don't want a lot, I'm just going to get $500. But remember, if your limit is $500, if you just spend $160, you're already above the 30%. So the smaller the limit, the more you are likely to go above that 30%. So if you know you can pay back and you're going to control yourself, it's better to have a higher limit, because if you have a higher limit and you spend, you're always going to be below that 30%, which will not affect your credit score. All right, guys, let's stop here. Next week that we have more of this financial education, you can ask more questions at that time. Write down your question. I had promised Helen to review her problem that she had at work today, and I can't leave this meeting today without doing that. But so at this moment, the webinar is officially closed. You're free to leave. Before you leave, guys, I just want to make a couple of announcements. September 4th is our webinar, which is our orientation class. We'll be talking about all the different programs that we have. If you have specific question linked with the programs, you can ask also in the chat forum, or you can bring your question on the phone where we'll be talking about. We've already told you about 2022 Here We Take Innovation Summit. That summit is really going to focus a lot on data and how we can transform businesses in Africa with the use of data. So we are still working on that. We're looking for volunteers on that. So those are the few announcements that I want to make. Also, we are always looking for speakers for this event. If you know anybody in your among a group of friends, that person must not be a database administrator. It should just be something that someone who is good and who's willing to share knowledge. We will contact that person and invite the person to come and present here, and we will all learn. The notion here is that we find people who can contribute positively to this community to make sure that we are gaining valuable information to make us move from whatever point we are today to the next point tomorrow. All right, guys. So thank you so much for coming. Helen, please go ahead. What's your